Hello guys, welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. So this is the part two to an email. It was quite a long email that was sent to us by one of our dear sisters who is a regular listener. So the part two to that email reads like this: How I sacrificed my son. Good morning, Brother Nashi. This is part two of how I sacrificed my son. What happened to me is that I felt cold in my knees and I wish that I could have done something, but this was nothing but a done deal. There was no reverse, only going forward. So my son, what happened to him is that he drove back to the city and to the place where he was driving from our home. This was somewhere around 100 kilometers when it all happened. My son, he was driving a very small car, and then there was this truck that was driving just behind him. So the truck driver that was operating that heavy machinery who was driving behind him kept on seeing a very big snake which was ahead of him. Then when he saw that snake, he said the snake would disappear, but in his mind he said that he wanted to speed up and drive right on top of that snake, because when he kept on looking at that snake, he said, this is quite a poisonous snake, so I should be the one that should kill this snake, otherwise it is going to be dangerous, or it is going to bite some people that will be crossing the street, and because of its poison they are going to die. This was a statement that he gave to the police officers who were on the scene. So this truck driver, what he did is that he sped up and he drove right on top of the snake. But at first, when he tried to do this, the snake then moved away from him. He did it again the second time with such determination, because he wanted to destroy this snake that kept on bothering him. And those that were in the way, who ended up being witnesses to this crime scene, said that this truck driver drove right on top of my son's car, and my son, he was struggling. My son, he tried to hoot and he tried changing lanes till the truck driver drove on top of the car. And the driver, when all of these things happened, he came back to his senses, and that was when he stopped the truck. But it was a little bit too late. My son was there and he was beyond recognition, and the blood that was lost on that day, it was quite a lot. Everywhere there was just blood. The police, what they had to do after the paramedics had arrived, they had to cut the doors to get his remains outside because he was stuck. My husband at the same time told me that our son had died, and at that time we had no phones, but he felt it in his blood that our son had passed away. I felt weak and I tried, and I could not control myself, and I cried. That same day at around 6 p.m., the police arrived and told us this sad news. I fell down on my knees, and my husband only said that he was sorry, but it had to happen. This is how we lost our child, and I was not allowed to mourn for my son, because he told me that the joy was coming, more money was on its way. We had quenched the thirst of those two boys. This was our first sacrifice, and the rest of the family, it looked like this was nothing but an innocent accident. My son, he had been killed by that crazy truck driver who had seen a vision of a snake that was moving in front of him, and he had ended up causing that accident. But my husband and I, we knew, and we knew everything that had happened behind the scenes. The body of my son arrived. This was 2 days later, and I remember very well asking myself, what did we get ourselves into? And my heart was broken as I saw my son's wife broken like that, crying and fainting. They had a very beautiful union, but the love of money had corrupted me and my husband. Body viewing time came, and I saw that my son was beyond recognition. I felt the power leaving my body, as if my soul was saying that this thing that you are doing, I cannot be part of it. I felt this other surge, rush of power leaving my body, And as I stood by the coffin looking at my son with a broken heart, I saw that he didn't have color. His head was crushed, and the parlor guys had tried to reconstruct for the purpose only for body viewing. He had discolored, meaning that he had lost a lot of blood, and I could only recognize my son that I gave birth to only by his beard. At that time, my husband was very strong and fit. He was leading in songs. He was jovial in his mood. And he was also part of the people who dug the grave. It was quite a strange thing that my husband did. Instead of him mourning our son, he showed no remorse, and a lot of villagers noticed this, and it was strange. After the burial, people displaced, and we were left. It was only the two of us, me and my husband. Those two boys, they slept very well on the day that we buried my son. A few days before the sacrifice, we could not sleep. They would make such a loud noise and strange sounds. But after his funeral, there was peace in our house. Yet deep within me, I found no meaning to life. I ate and slept and still found no interest in anything because I knew that my son was gone. Was it worth it? A few months after the sacrifice, my husband opened a very big grocery shop, and life for him became easier. He bought a Mazda, and back in the days, it was the cars whereby only the rich people were the ones that could afford to buy a Mazda. One strange thing, even if we would sell groceries for a few hundreds, tomorrow morning that money would multiply even times hundreds. Money became part of our life, yet every now and then we had to sacrifice real human blood, and years went by. Our daughter continued to age, and if any man wanted to marry her, he would die. She was to stay as a wife to these two small boys, and as for that car that my husband had bought, strange things kept on happening because sometimes what would happen is that when my husband and I will be driving from our grocery store, like if it was late at night, we would hear some strange sounds as if we had a lot of people that we had locked up in the boot of our car. All of those voices, they were quite familiar. Each and every time this thing, my brother, will happen, me and my husband, when we would stop by the side of the road, then my husband will say, let us go and see if there is anyone at the back of the car. When we would open the boot of the car, we will see that it will be those two small boys that were being naughty. They would imitate the voice of those loved ones, our relatives that we had sacrificed. And this thing, it was like they were tormenting us. And the more that they tormented us, the more they seemed to enjoy it. After we had opened the boot of the car, we would see those two small boys, then they would just disappear. Late at night, they would come back and they would give us some money, and they will say that we know that we wronged you along the way, so we have brought this money. Can you please accept it? This is a form of our apology that we are giving to you.